such an honor to be speaking here today. Personally, I'm really happy that you all asked me to join you and speak about 4 pillars, also called Bazi. So if I refer to 4 pillars as Bazi, it's the Chinese name. We're talking about the same thing. So I will use those words interchangeably during the course of my talk. So 4 pillars. We're going to focus today on how we look at a 4 pillars chart with regard to health, because there's a lot of clues in a chart, believe it or not, about your own health and the health of your clients. And it's a very individualized thing, a way to find your personal balance, or if you're working with clients, how to spot some key points in a chart that might help you help them find their balance. So in this room, we have Feng Shui consultants of various backgrounds and training. And if you were to canvass all of you and ask, well, what is Feng Shui about? You'd get lots of different answers. You might hear, it's about landforms, or it's about the art of placement, or it's about energy in a space. But I'd like to put forth another notion that I think we could all agree on, and that Feng Shui is really about the people. It's about our clients, because at the end of the day, they're our reason for being. They're why we do what we do. And Feng Shui is really focused on the people that we serve, finding out what their needs are, what their objectives are, and then tailoring our recommendations to serve them, to help them. So if we want to understand our clients and really be able to help them in a much deeper way, the Bazi, or the 4 pillars chart of each of your clients and each of the members of a household that you're working on, is an invaluable tool. It gives you so much more information about your client that really allows you to help them in a much more targeted and specific way. So to my mind, there's no greater tool to work in a Feng Shui environment than 4 pillars, to really know your clients and to help them. So I'm just going to adjust this so that I can see. So why would we look at a 4 pillars chart? Well, the 4 pillars chart can tell us about someone's basic personality, their characteristics. It can tell us what sorts of work they're good at, what their relationships are like. But for today's purposes, and very importantly, it can tell us a lot about their health. General health, when health issues might come up, what are their potential areas of weakness, so that we can use the Feng Shui and other related practices within the system to support them. And often, people seek out a Feng Shui consultant not because things are going really well. They often seek out the help of a Feng Shui expert because they're having some kind of life crisis or a problem in their life. And very often, the reason that a Feng Shui consultant is called in is because they're having some kind of health problem. And either Western medicine hasn't quite served them in the way that they need, or they want to use Feng Shui to support the Western medicine approaches that they're using for their health. So it really helps us to understand each individual, who they are, what they need, and then how those individuals in a household work together. What's the dynamic between these people? So that's where and why we would use 4 pillars. So for those of you who don't know what is 4 pillars, how do we arrive at this birth chart? Essentially, a 4 pillars chart is based on the year, the month, and the day, and the hour of a person's birth. It's basically a snapshot of the Tangshu, or the Chinese calendar, from the moment a person was born. Here, and I'm using for all of my slides, the wonderful Christophe has developed an amazing software, and this is a quick snapshot of the Tangshu calendar. And as you'll see, the calendar describes a kind of energy at a certain moment in time using the 5 elements, which there's a yin and yang version of each element. So you have a total of 10 what we call heavenly stems, which are along the top. Use my pointer here. As well as, so these are the stems up here, these are all elements. And then down here, we have the 12 earthly branches, which are the 12 Chinese zodiac animal signs, which most of you are familiar with. If you go to a Chinese restaurant, you get the paper placemat and you know your year of the dog or year of the rooster. I think most people are fairly familiar with that. But all of the 12 animals have the hidden elements within them, which gives them sort of a package of elements hidden inside of them as well. And when you take this snapshot of a moment in time, it's our understanding that that energy of that moment imprints upon a person and a person takes on the characteristics of the elements of that moment in time. So that's what a 4 pillars chart is. So the next question I get often is, well, how can an astrology chart tell you about somebody's health? Like, what does astrology have to do with health? How does that work? Well, the reason why we can use astrology to tell us about health within the context of Feng Shui and Chinese metaphysics is because it is one part of a larger, integrated, holistic, interconnected system, which we call wushu, or the 5 arts. Here's a chart showing all of the different disciplines within this larger system. They all interconnect, they all overlap at certain points, and the most important thing is that they're all founded on the same fundamental principles, which is yin and yang and the 5 elements. So as you can see, under the medicine category of the wushu, you have traditional Chinese medicine and acupuncture. So your traditional Chinese medicine and acupuncture doctor is really working within the same system. They're still using the same principles. And so for that reason, we can use the chart, the 4 pillars chart, to link up with traditional Chinese medicine and gain greater insight about how to help somebody. And we can also, likewise, just like 4 pillars relates to Chinese medicine, it also incorporates with the Feng Shui. So we're able to also then tie in Feng Shui related approaches to space that support someone's particular and specific chart. So the most important thing, whether you're talking about Feng Shui or Bazi or 4 pillars, the most important principle in all of Chinese metaphysics really comes down to the balance of yin and yang. Very important. And when we're looking at a Bazi chart, that is the most fundamental consideration. We pull up a chart, we want to know right away what is the yin and yang balance in a person's chart, because balance really is the key to health. If a chart is particularly imbalanced, you can be pretty sure that this person is more likely to have health challenges throughout their life. So how do we know if a chart has a lot of yin elements or yang elements? This chart sort of breaks down roughly all of the 10 heavenly stems, which, as I said, are the 5 elements, and all of the 12 earthly branches can be roughly categorized into either the yin category or a yang category. Now, they don't all have equal weight. Some stems or animals are more yin or more yang than others, but roughly, very generally, we can put them all into one of 2 categories. Can everyone see that okay? So here's the first chart. I have a lot of examples, and I do hope to have a little bit of time at the end, but these are all the cases I'm going to share with you today are all real live cases of actual people that I have worked with. There are no celebrity cases. These are real life, everyday people, because as consultants, generally that's who we're working with, unless we're so fortunate as to get a celebrity client, which would be fantastic. But generally, they're all real life people. This is the chart of a woman. And as you can very clearly see, based on the color, and if we were to look at the chart I just showed you with the yin column and the yang column, every single one of these 8 words or 4 pillars is completely yin. This is an excessively yin chart and an excess amount of water. It's a very extreme chart. And so you could say, well, this person is very likely to have health challenges. And of course, what is the one thing, when we're excess yin, what do we want to add to find balance? Yang. If we have too much water, what's the element we want to add for balance? Fire, right? So this particular person, I was consulted to look at this person's chart because this is a woman who lives in Indonesia in an equatorial climate. And this person was considering a move to the cold northerly part of the United States. And what did I think about that? And my thinking is that the feng shui of where she is, being a hot equatorial climate, maximum yang type of environment, was exactly what she needed for balance. That in that environment, she was perfectly healthy. She wasn't having any trouble. But the potential for her to develop more health problems in a less yang environment, like a cold northerly climate, could be problematic for her. So that's a very general way of looking at a chart and of looking at feng shui. Climate is a huge contributing factor to health. So if you have a very extreme chart of a client, you could suggest to them it is rather drastic, but you could certainly suggest to them that a more warm or more cool climate is a very fundamental way to use Feng Shui to achieve balance. This chart is another client that I've worked with. Again, as you can see, a very yin chart, very cold, very damp chart. Again, she needed fire, and she shared with me that her favorite place to vacation was Sedona, Arizona. If any of you know the United States and Sedona, Arizona, there's hardly a hotter, drier climate in the entire country, of which the U.S. has a very diverse climates and microclimates. So she said she never felt better than when she was in Sedona, Arizona. Now, life being the way it is and practical concerns, not everyone can pick up and decide they're going to move to the other side of the country. Sometimes we have to work within the parameters we're given. And so in this case, she couldn't move. So what did we do? We looked at the micro level of Feng Shui. We put her in a south room, a warm, sunny, bright room. And then to further make her feel better, she wanted the whole room decorated in the colors of Sedona, Arizona, things that made her feel hot and warm and sunny. And that went a long way to helping her find balance in a very small, targeted way. So that's another way that we can look at a chart and know that someone really needs to have yin and yang balance established. You can use the space to do so. This is a chart of a woman who's got the opposite problem. This is an excessively yang chart. As you can see, there is no water in this chart. And if you understand, even if you haven't studied four pillars, if you don't understand Bazi, you can just look at the colors and see it's a hot, dry chart. And a further, deeper study of four pillars would tell you that the tiger and the horse are actually part of a three harmony combination, which creates more fire. So there's actually more fire in this chart than meets the eye. And in fact, this excess fire that you see in her chart has absolutely contributed to health problems. In fact, they're all fire-related health problems. She's a smoker, so that is exacerbating the condition. So everyone knows smoking is not good for you, but in this case, it's going to be hard for her to quit. But it's also absolutely the worst element she could be adding into her life. She has had 2 strokes and has heart problems as well as eye problems. And those are all, and I'm going to explain a little more depth, those are all fire-related problems. So right away, just looking at this chart, you can pretty much get a sense that what she really needs is water. Luckily, she lives in a cool, northerly climate. So my advice to her would be, do not be in the south bedroom and do not move to a hot equatorial climate because it would tip the scale. It's already an extreme chart. Moving to a Feng Shui environment that's excessively yang would be pretty bad for her. So these are just some basic yin and yang things to see. The next level of analysis we look at, after we determine what the yin and yang balance is of a chart, we look to see what's the balance of the 5 elements within a chart. And from the classics, it says if the 5 elements in Bazi can be kept in harmony and peace, then that person will have no serious diseases during their entire life. So we want to see, are all of the 5 elements present in a chart? And if they're there, are they healthy elements or are they being damaged in some way? Because the elements can kind of tell us more about the health problems that a person may or may not have. So in the Chinese system, whether you're talking about traditional Chinese medicine and acupuncture, or whether you're talking about 4 pillars and Bazi, all of the 5 elements relate to organs and systems of the body. Wood relates to the liver and gallbladder organs and the liver gallbladder system of the body. Fire is the heart and small intestines and also the eyes. The earth element has to do with the spleen, stomach, and pancreas, as well as the immune system. Immune system problems are related to earth element. So when you have autoimmune diseases, that's often also a problem and a function of some imbalance in the earth system of the body. The metal system governs the lungs and large intestines and the skin. So an imbalance of metal could give you problems with those areas. And water has to do with the kidneys, the bladder, and reproductive organs. I do have a client who has ovarian cancer, and it is a water-related problem. So certain cancers you'll see have to do with specific elements. So all of the elements relate to these parts of the body. So by reading a chart, we can see what system of the body is more vulnerable. So one issue that sometimes people do seek the help of a Feng Shui professional for is for mental health. We have a lot of mental health problems, at least in the United States, and I'm guessing it's not just localized to our country, but probably a global problem. But depression is a very common problem, and that can sometimes be spotted in a chart. This chart, as you can see, there's no fire at all in this chart. Fire, in addition to being heart and eyes and small intestines, is also about joy, happiness, feeling good. So when someone is missing fire completely from their chart, they have a higher likelihood of depression. It's harder for them to feel happy, just in a very general way. And a deeper reading of 4 pillars would tell you that the dragon and the rat, which you can see here, are part of a 3-harmony combination of water. So there's actually even more water in this chart than maybe would initially meet the eye. So fire is what's really needed for this person who has depression. So fire can come in a number of ways. Fire can be making more time for laughter with friends, watching funny movies, going to comedy shows. It could be bringing fire in terms of doing dance and physical movement. It could also be doing a hot yoga or a kundalini yoga, something that raises the heat and fire in your body. Studies have shown, and we do know from a scientific standpoint, that the number one best treatment for people with depression is physical activity, which really supports the notion that Chinese medicine is putting forth, that fire element is the necessary element. So even Western medicine recognizes the important role that physical activity and bringing the fire up in the body can bring to relieving depression. So it's a very basic, fundamental way of looking at mental health. It's just, again, yin and yang balance, and balance of the 5 elements. So this person, no fire, this is an element out of balance. Now it also means this person could have trouble with their heart, small intestines, and eyes. So those would be things to take a look at throughout the person's life. Maybe they're more vigilant about their health in those respects. That would be a system of the body that they're more vulnerable to because they're missing that element. Here's another case. This physical health. So in addition to mental health, a lot of people come for help because they have physical ailments. This is the chart of a person with type 1 diabetes. And as I said, the earth element is the element of the stomach, spleen, and pancreas. And as you can see in this chart, there's only this small amount of earth. So the element that supports the stomach, spleen, and pancreas is weak to begin with, but when you understand how the animals relate to one another, you would know that the rabbit and the goat combine to make wood. So what little earth there is in this chart is being combined away and has been compromised. Also, the fire, which would support the earth, is so far away, it can't get to the earth to support it. So there's an issue here with the earth element in the chart. So the useful elements for this person to help them get their balance would be to add more earth element and metal element. And probably the easiest way to add that into your life, whereas fire, you can easily get fire with physical activity as well as food, but food is a great way to add the elements back in to achieve balance. While certainly a less serious issue, one that is very common in terms of health is weight loss. That's another issue that people may come seek a Feng Shui consultant to help them. They may want help with their weight loss strategy. And how can you give advice to someone who is looking to lose weight? Well, one thing you can look for in a chart is excess earth element. Earth is the element that stores things in it. When you look at all of the earth element animals, earth is the element that holds things. So when you have too much earth in a chart, you have a higher likelihood of gaining weight more easily and a harder time getting it off. So in this chart, you can see that the little bit of water is this is what we call heavenly combination. Yin water and yang earth combine, and the water sort of gives up its own identity to become, gets tied up with the earth. So there's a huge amount of earth, and the fire, as you can see, is just feeding the earth. So all the energy in this chart, if we follow the pattern and the movement of the energy in the chart, it's all going to earth. So it's this person does have weight problems. Their whole life they have struggled with weight. So when you see a person who you're trying to help with weight loss and they have a chart that looks like this, you know that they can try twice as hard as someone else, and it might be more challenging for them to lose the weight. However, it also gives us a couple of strategies diet-wise that might assist them. In knowing the 5-element theory, the 2 elements that can reduce the earth would be wood to counter the earth and metal. So a diet made mostly of metal and wood foods and limiting earth element foods would go a long way. You could help work with that person to tailor their diet specifically to what's in their chart and help give them support. So after we look at the yin and yang balance, and after we look at the makeup of the 5 elements and the condition of those 5 elements within a chart, the next concern for a 4 pillars practitioner would be to look at the overall pattern of a chart. Every chart has a particular pattern. This is one of the most extreme patterns I have ever seen. It's what we call a special pattern. So we have patterns that are sort of your everyday run-of-the-mill patterns. Most people, 80 to 90% of the population fall into what we call a regular chart pattern. But then there are people whose chart is so extreme, it becomes exceptional. Now, an exceptional chart could lead to an exceptional life. These could be people who have extraordinary achievements in their lives. Someone like Steve Jobs, his chart was an extraordinarily imbalanced chart, producing an amazing life, but also it does affect the health, because anytime a chart is incredibly imbalanced, you still have the health issues that go along with that. So this particular person, the special name for this type of chart is called a shang, or a structure. And it's a chart made of 2 opposite elements. If you know the 5-element theory, you know that fire and water counters fire. They're sort of opposite elements. And it's pure. It's an absolutely extreme chart. This person did share with me that they were having a number of health troubles, all kinds of health troubles. Tried this, tried that, Western doctors, Eastern doctors, tried everything. And eventually what this person discovered was the saving grace of their life, and which brought them balance and good health, was to go to a raw, vegan, plant-based diet. Now, you might say that is an extreme diet, and yes, it's a pretty extreme diet, but remember, this is also an extreme chart. If you know the 5-element theory, you know that the element that pacifies the conflict between fire and water is wood. Wood is what we would call the useful god, or the useful element for this particular person. So this was a case where finding balance meant using the element that brought this chart and this extreme chart into balance and focusing on that. So she did change to this new diet and has great health, and such great health that she's now working with other people to help them find their balance through food and nutrition as well. So whenever there's an extreme chart, we want to look to the element that helps bring that into balance, and you can focus on that for health. The probably most common illness that people are concerned about and that affects a huge part of our population is cancer. And certainly we do get cancer patients as clients. This is the chart of a woman with breast cancer. Happy to say she's in remission and cancer-free at the moment. So when you get a chart like that, you want to obviously know, well, what's the useful element for this person, so you can help them in their space to support them, but also to give them continuing support to maintain their good health as they go forward, because there's always, of course, the fear the cancer will return. So what is it that you can do to help this person maintain that balance? Well, a chart like this, some charts is very easy to spot right away. The charts I've shared with you thus far have been very, very clear to see the imbalance. This chart, it's not so easy. So how do we know where to look? This person has a pretty even yin and yang. If you use the calculations that we use to determine yin and yang ratio, this is a very balanced chart, almost 50-50 yin and yang, so it's not a yin and yang balance issue. If you look, all 5 elements are present in fairly good ratio, so it's not an element problem. So where's the health issue coming from? Patterns is a regular pattern chart, nothing extreme. So the key to understanding on a deeper level sometimes what's happening in a chart is as simple as energy flow. Just like it's important in a home for the energy to flow, and we don't want blockages of qi. We want the qi to be able to circulate freely within a home. So too in a Bazi chart, we want a nice flow of energy both up and down within the pillar and from side to side at the tops and the bottoms. We want a nice flow of energy in a chart. If you see a chart where there's a lot of elements in conflict, either with one another within a pillar or side to side via clash or problems, then you know right away that this person is more likely to have some health issues because there's a blockage of qi. The qi does not circulate within this chart. And that's exactly what happened in this case. So you can see we have water countering fire in the hour. We have earth countering water between the day and the month. We have wood countering earth between the year and the month. Again, we have earth countering water top to bottom within this pillar. And we have a fire-water clash in the year. So kind of all over this person's chart, there is a fighting of energy and a disjointed flow of energy. And just that energetic disruption can point to problems with health. So what's the health problem? Well, how do you know what's going to happen? In this particular chart, the earth element, which is here and here, this one is severely weakened and damaged. It's weakened by the metal, and it's being countered by the wood. So right away we can see earth element is quite compromised. And down here, while it's receiving some fire from the horse, it's sort of tired by trying to control the water next door. So the earth element in this person's chart is weak. And because the earth element is the resource to this person's day master or their main element, their personal element, resource is what gives you longevity and life. So if the resource element and the earth element are compromised, this is immune system. Most cancers are a function of aging and immune system. As we know, we have killer cells in our body which destroy cancer cells. And when our immune system is weakened, they don't do the job they ought to by destroying the cancer cells. So a lot of cancers are immune system related. And that's what happened in this chart. So in advising this person, well, what kind of diet would be good for her? A diet that had a lot of earth element is going to be a good diet for this person, and some metal as well. It's a very weak metal person. If we were to qualify her day master, which is here, we would say she's weak metal. So we could advise this person with dietary changes using the same system. Another common reason people come to a Feng Shui consultant for health issues is because they're undergoing fertility treatments. It's very common. People want help. They want to use, especially if it's a really challenging case of trying to conceive, they want to use every tool at their disposal. They may be going through Western techniques, in vitro fertilization, along with acupuncture, because we do know scientifically, it's been proven that using acupuncture with all of the Western medicine techniques to conceive, you have higher success rates. And sometimes these patients, clients, also want to use their space to support that. They want to make sure they're doing everything in their power to have a successful outcome, because fertility treatments, at least in the United States, are extremely expensive. So you want to do everything you can to support that process. So often people will come to you to help with conception. So how do you see that in a chart? Well, the first thing to do is to look at what we call the day master elements, the element of the day stem at the top. So that represents the person. And the first thing we want to look for is the output element. So if you know the 5-element theory, earth produces metal. Metal would represent her children in this case. So you would look at the chart and see, is the output element located anywhere in the chart? In this case, you can see there's output element both in the day pillar and hidden down here in the hour pillar. So there is output. So if the person came to you who was trying to conceive had none of their output in their basic natal chart, you could look at the luck cycle and see if that output element is present. Likewise, you could use a year. For example, this year is a metal year. So if a client came to you who wanted to conceive, there was no output element in their chart, perhaps the year energy would support that. So you could look at that as well. And then, obviously, when it comes to conception, timing is key. It's all about doing things at the right time and just the right moment. So we also would like to look at, in terms of helping this person, look at the luck cycle they're in. Does it support or not support? In this case, this was a tricky case because the luck cycle that the person was in, the goat, clashed both the day pillar as well as the hour. And when you know 4 pillars, the day pillar represents the person's physical body, your health, you, and the hour represents your children. So a clash on both the day and the hour pillar means that in this cycle of time, it could be more challenging. And in fact, in this case, it was quite challenging situation. So you always want to look at, would the luck cycle or year clash the day and the hour? So there's a little bit of timing that goes into it. If this person had tried maybe, in an earlier luck cycle at a younger age, probably would have been a little bit easier, not necessarily just because of the age, but because of the energy of that moment in time, supporting or not supporting that action. So sometimes it's not about aging. Sometimes maybe someone in a younger luck cycle would be harder to get pregnant than later on because the energy of an older luck cycle, for example, might support that. So for fertility, we look at output element, making sure that this is not being clashed in any way, and looking for it here. Happy to say that all went well and she did have a healthy baby, but it was not easy to get there because of the timing issue. So it's not just about the output element being present, it's also about what is the energy of the moment in time that you're trying to put forth this action. Is it supportive or not supportive? And when? Timing is really important when it comes to health. Someone could have very good health in younger years and then move into a luck cycle where suddenly everything has changed. Luck cycles have energy. So this luck cycle, this is the luck cycle span of a person that I'm working with who does have cancer, quite advanced cancer. And it's a very similar case to the one I showed you where there's a lot of disruption of flow of energy in the chart, and there's a lot of problem with earth and water elements in the chart. So earth is the element that this person really needs for balance and for health and longevity. Well, the good news is that this person is now in a luck cycle that has earth and metal, which is exactly what this person needs. So it helps to give hope to this person, saying, yes, you've been through really challenging times, but the energy of this moment in time that you're in actually supports your health. And if you can get through this phase, there's every reason to hope that you'll have more time and can strengthen your body. So luck cycles can bring either what we need, and sometimes luck cycles bring us what we don't need. In a case of a chart that's excessively water or excessively fire, you don't want to see a luck cycle that has more of what you don't need. You want to see the opposite to bring balance. So likewise, if a client is missing in an element entirely, say they have no metal, for example, and they've had metal in every luck cycle, and then suddenly they're in a luck cycle with no metal, that's when you're going to see a change in health because suddenly everything changes. So the wonderful use for pillars is that we can also, it's a predictive quality. It allows us the ability to have foresight and to use prevention, to know, okay, I'm doing okay now, but things are going to change in 4, 5, 6 years, so I'd better take action now and be extra vigilant at this particular period of time. So it's a wonderful tool to help us see what may be coming down the road and prepare and use some tools to help ourselves. The other thing is, in addition to the energy of a luck cycle, the energy of a year can also be quite important. If someone's already elderly, generally anyone over 70 or someone who's already very vulnerable with their health, the energy of a year can have very strong impact. So when you're working with older clients who do have some health issues, the year-to-year reading is very important. What kind of energy does this particular year bring? Is it the element they need or the element that they don't need? And then based on what the balance is, with respect to time, you can choose some remedies or some solutions that might help them. So how to achieve balance? once you understand by looking at a chart, what's needed, you have so many different options available to find the balance that you need. As we said, you can use Feng Shui, either the macro Feng Shui, which is a region or part of the planet that gives you the element you need for balance. You can also use micro Feng Shui. Say you have a child who's ill. They obviously can't move to Bora Bora where the weather is better. You have to sort of work within the parameters of their home, so you can work with the Feng Shui to support their health issues based on what they need. In terms of health, as we know, let food be thy medicine. I think it was Hippocrates who said this. Food is really, really important. And all foods, whether you're a vegetarian or a meat eater, doesn't matter, all foods are broken down into the 5 elements. There are a lot of wonderful resources out there. So if you know you need more earth element, you could easily take a shopping list to the market with you and load up on more earth element foods. Tailor your diet to you. And that's the thing about diet. There's so many paleo diet, carb-free diet, gluten-free diet. There's so many diets out there. And what I'd like to say about diet is that when you look at it in terms of 4 pillars chart, a person is very specific and unique, and the diet that works for each person is also specific and unique. It really depends on what's in your chart. What works for you may not work for you. You may need something different. So using the 5 elements of food is one of the easiest and best ways to bring balance to your chart. If you have a serious imbalance or you want to support an element that's weak in your chart, far fewer things. Food is really the key. The other thing you could do is activities. As I said, when someone has no fire, we could certainly use fire element in terms of physical activity. Like in the case of depression, you can do activities associated with those elements to bring balance. We have to expand our thinking about the elements. They're not just colors and actual wood, but they're the things associated with those elements that can really help bring balance to a person. And of course, because Tai Chi and Qigong are all part of the Wushu, and they're part of this larger system that we're working within, there are specific Tai Chi and Qigong movements that are related to specific elements. There are some Qigong movements that are metal, that are some that are fire. So you could work with an experienced teacher to, I do know a person who has their whole routine tailored to their need for metal. So they have a lot of metal movements incorporated into the exercise that they do every day. So that's another way to bring it in. And of course, there are also subtle energy things that we can do for the body. There are specific mudras that are related to each of the 5 elements. So maybe in your meditation practice, you pick a mudra that's a wood element if you need wood, or maybe a metal element mudra. There's so many different layers because the system is all integrated and connected. You can pull from the different parts of the system to help you achieve your balance. And that's it. Are there any questions? Any questions?
I just wondered if you could explain the concept of the fertility, presumably also fertility golden chart, where sometimes you actually have to use the element that's predominant, even though it seems counterintuitive, if something happens.
So her question, I don't know if you could hear her, was about an extreme chart where it's all one element or all another. In cases like that, it's what we would call a following, follow the wealth or follow the output, one element of that chart dominates. There's 2 ways of looking at it. On the one hand, those exceptional charts often lead to exceptional lives. And Steve Jobs' case is probably most famous. He's all output, one of the most creative, productive people on the planet. But that imbalance of elements, while it can lead, so you have to sort of separate looking at a chart for a successful career and life path versus the health aspects, because even if you have an exceptional chart, like that's so bad it's good sort of thing, you still have to pay attention to the fact that it's highly imbalanced. You still need to get balance in terms of yin and yang and the elements for the health reasons. So while that person might have an extraordinary life and extraordinary accomplishments, there's still the health piece that must be considered. You still have to try to achieve balance either with food, exercise, anything that helps bring up the balance. So if it's a chart that's all water, in the case of the first person, the climate provides the balance they need, done. But But if it's a person with all water and they're in a very cold northern, they live in Alaska, that person is very likely to have problems. So they would have to work out a lot more, eat a lot more warm cooked foods. They'd have to compensate in other ways. They could have an extraordinary life, but they are still much more prone to having serious health issues. Yeah. Yes?
If there's a need for a certain element, can you bring that into the house? Bring actual fire, actual water? Is that right?
You can, but it's a different way of working with space. It's a very literal way of working with space. Of course, you can bring wood element in. Say my useful element is wood. I really like it. Yes, bringing houseplants, of course, that's always beneficial for everybody. It doesn't quite have the effect on health as things that interact with the body more like food and exercise do. Obviously, we want to use our space. We want to make sure a person is sleeping in their good direction. You could use the wood sector of the house, perhaps. Actual plants, while it's good for air quality, doesn't quite give the impact that maybe being in a sector would. Now, say someone needed wood, they could spend more time in woods and nature. That's another good way for them to incorporate that into their lives. But colors and things like that, they do give a boost, but it's a smaller percentage boost than doing a physical activity related to the element. We want something that really is affecting the physical body a little bit more. It's a good question, though. Yes?
For the water person, we recommended fire. Okay, that's fine for the yin-yang balance, but you also create a crash between water and fire. Are you not concerned about that?
Well, overall yin and yang balance, right? Fire and water, we want to get, if it's too much water, we need fire, we need heat. So however you want to bring in, we have to not think of it so literally. We have to kind of expand our thinking about 5 elements so it's not actual water, actual fire. We have to think in terms of hot, cold, damp, dry, things like that. Yin, those sorts of yin and things. So if you have excess water, you have both excess cold, excess damp. So you need excess warmth and dry. So whether the climate gives you warm and dry or food gives you warm and dry, that helps. Of course, in the chart that I showed you that was all water and fire, yes, the mitigating element, which is wood, is the necessary element when you have a chart that's split water, fire. Yes, wood is the useful element. It is the element that brings those two combative elements into harmony. So in the case of that person, yes, wood is the useful element, and it was the key to achieving health and balance for that person. So it depends. If you're just water and fire, or are you looking at cold, hot, damp, dry, those sorts of things? There's lots of different layers that we have to look at, other than just taking the elements literally. We have to sort of expand our thinking a little bit. Yes?
How do you go about if you're missing the hour of the birth of your client?
That's always tricky. There are things that we can do, sort of process of elimination questions. Her question was, well, what do you do if you don't know your hour? And this comes up a lot. People don't always know their hour. It's kind of, I actually think it's a fun challenge when we don't know someone's hour. And there are questions that we can ask because the hour is children. So if a person has children and doesn't have children, that can give us the ability to eliminate a few hours. Well, it can't be this hour, it can't be that. It can be a tedious process. It's never 100%, but we have ways of sort of eliminating hours that it couldn't be, and sort of playing with it. But it's tricky. Sometimes we doubt. I mean, there's a million different ways to try, but always better if you do know. But there are ways to kind of hone in a little bit. Yeah. Yes.
I've got 3 quick questions. Have you looked at the chart of our election? Because we had an election in this country on the first day. Did you look at that or not?
It was an extreme fire day. It was extreme fire. It was a fire day, fire month, and of course, fire rooster year. Fire is about passion. It's also about change, right? People want change, and they're emotional. They're, so an extreme fire day made for an interesting election here.
Did you look at the hour as well? Or?
I didn't look at the hour as well, because voting happens through the course of the day. So there's different ways that people, this question comes up a lot, because certainly in the United States election, we were looking at hours.
And there are also different astrological systems, like, Western astrology, Vedic,
Sure.
and Nine-Star Key. In Nine-Star Key, it's used only one sort of way to look at men and women in the same way, so they got the same kind of number. obviously in your system, men and women are different.
All people are different. So I have studied 9-star Qi, and it's a good question, and I thank you for asking. 9-star Qi is based on the Minghua, or the number of the year of birth, and it's a Japanese adaptation of, I think, my understanding is the Minghua system. And so in the 9-star Qi system, because it's Japanese, they don't make a distinction between men and women. In the Chinese system and in the Wushu, certainly, women go one way, men go the other, because we're opposite. It's the yin and the yang, right? So even a man, say you've got twin boy and girl, say they're born at the same day and the same time, their charts are still different because the luck cycles go in opposite directions. So there are many, many, many more combinations of 4 pillars charts. 4 pillars charts much more specific. 9-star Qi is it's a lot more general because it's really just based on your year of birth. Whereas the 4 pillars, there are millions of possible combinations, and it's much, much, much more specific. 9-star Qi, in my opinion, having studied both of them, is much more general. It can give you sort of an overview of a person because it's based on the year. There's a little bit of month energy in there. But in terms of being predictive for health, I don't find the 9-star Qi as specific as one would need it to be to look at health predictively, or to be more specific about.
Last question. So you mentioned that the environment might not affect the elements too much in the personal kind of bodies, but a lot of people move to another country, dry or wet, and they suddenly feel better.
Yeah.
So, kind of how much that influence?
That's huge influence. That's absolutely.
Doesn't really the elements of the environment like plants or this other.
Well, you have to think about the impact. So, what has a greater impact, the climate of an entire country and region, or a small candle in a room? You have to weigh the size of the thing quite literally. I mean, Feng Shui really is about earth luck. It's about the energy we get from the earth, from our environment. And there's much more leverage in an entire country's energy than just a small placement that we put into our space. So anyway, I think we're out of time, but if you have other questions, certainly see me afterward, and I thank you all.